Greetings, everyone. I am glad to be here, and I am glad that you are here. Today is going to kick off a brand new series aimed at helping new players. We have, kind of a sister series that we've been running on Saturdays that are for budget decks and players that are newer to Arena specifically, or just people looking for maybe a deck they can grind some wins out quickly with and not have to invest a lot of the more difficult to acquire rare and mythic wildcards, right? But this series is going to be far more about the education side of Magic the Gathering. This is going to be teaching the very basics in the start of what are creatures, what are enchantments and artifacts, and all that kind of thing. All of, the very most basic, starting with this very video, we're going to be going over those things. I recognize for a lot of my current crowd and viewers and things, this might not be overly helpful. This video is designed for people who are just starting in their journey with Magic the Gathering. But I do think it will be beneficial for some subset of people. So if you know somebody who might help, or this video series might help, please recommend them to it. I'm really going to do my best to expound in these videos to help people. It is paramount, though. If there are questions, please put them down below. I read every single question, bar none. There is not a comment on one of my YouTube videos that I have not read, right? So I encourage you, if you have even a question you feel, oh man, this might be kind of a silly question, please let me know, and I may be able to answer it right down in the comments below. If not, I may devote time in future videos to answering that question specifically. So please, by all means, let me know those sorts of questions, and if I don't have the answer, I can find it. So let's get started. Today's video, a lot more about again, just the absolute ground level basics. In future videos, we're going to start going over more and more advanced concepts. And even for those of you who maybe are a little more advanced, you might not get much out of this video, but in future videos, you likely will. The very first thing I want to cover is, what are the card types? What is it that you are going to be putting your hands on, or in this case, proverbial hands, if it ends up being a mouse? And what do those things do? Okay, the very first one I would like to cover is, what is a creature? You see here, Sanctuary Cat is a creature cat. It says right there in the middle. You will find that that is a theme, a running theme, with all of the other card types. This one says Sorcery, this one says Instant, right there in between the, picture and the text box down below. That is how you can tell whatever card you are attempting to cast, what type of card it is. And based on the type of card, it will interact differently with the board. So, and by board, I mean the playing surface, the field of play, the, where the game is taking place, right? So in this case, this is a creature. Well, what is a creature? Every player begins with, in a standard game of Magic, 20 life. And the objective, with few caveats, but the objective normally is get your opposing player's life total to 0. The most common way of doing that is attacking with creatures during combat and dealing damage to the player. You will look over at Sanctuary Cat. There is a number and a slash and then another number. In this case, it is a 1-2. People would often refer to it just by those numbers, rather than, even occasionally, when you have a card like this that doesn't have anything special going on, you might not even remember its name, and that's okay. It's perfectly okay to say, hey, that 1-2. You might even refer to that creature by its stats, or a 6-6, or a 4-4, or, a 3-4, or something like that. It's okay to refer to them by those numbers. It helps to remember the names, but while you're new, understand this is okay and to be expected. There's a lot to take in. So in this case, the Sanctuary Cat has 1 power and 2 toughness. What does this mean? 1 power is the amount of damage that will be dealt to it, and the 2 toughness is the amount of damage it can receive without being destroyed. Okay? So, in some other card games, maybe you can choose to deal damage directly to the player, bypassing creatures. Maybe you can choose to attack creatures and things. None of that plays here in Magic the Gathering. In Magic the Gathering, I choose how many creatures of mine I wish to attack with. I will attack, let's say I have 2 Sanctuary Cats. I can choose to attack with one of them. I can choose to attack with both of them or none of them, as the situation warrants. But let's say I choose to attack with both Sanctuary Cats. We come in and attack. Now, as the defending player, you would be granted the opportunity to block or not block. So let's say I have 2 Sanctuary Cats attacking and you have 2 Sanctuary Cats back. You can then choose to block as you choose. I do not attack the creatures. I attack you, the player. You choose how you will block. So one possible scenario would be, since there are only Sanctuary Cats on the battlefield, they have 1 power and 2 toughness. You might choose to block 1 Sanctuary Cat on 1 Sanctuary Cat. This is acceptable. Alternatively, though, you may choose to put 2 Sanctuary Cats in front of 1 other Sanctuary Cat and kill it. Yes, things are getting complex, aren't they? Yeah. All right. We're going to have some object lessons in combat. Fear not, that's for next video. Suffice to say, attacking and blocking, very important, and you do that with creatures. Moving on. Sorceries. Sorceries do not stay out on the battlefield. You'll note down in the corner there is no power and toughness or anything like that. Sorceries are an effect where you pay the mana cost. We're gonna go over that in just a second. And then this effect happens 1 time and it's done. In this case, a sorcery is destroy target creature power 3 or less. There will be other kinds of sorceries. Deal some damage, maybe draw some cards, maybe make your opponent discard cards. Lots of different effects, but they happen right now, and then they're done. Sorceries specifically can only be done during your turn in your main phase. Things get complicated from here. Suffice to say, only at a time you can cast a creature can you cast a sorcery, or vice versa. So, in this case, if you had a Reeve Soul and I had a Sanctuary Cat, you could say, destroy target creature power 3 or less. Sanctuary Cat having 1 power, Reeve Soul would work. Now let's pretend Sanctuary Cat had 5 power. Reeve Soul can no longer target that creature because it's not power 3 or less, right? Let's very quickly address what mana cost is. All right, so if you'll follow my mouse here, right up here at the top, right there, is a mana cost. When we hover in, it will be on the very top right-hand side of the card. There will be some number of symbols, and then typically a number inside of a little kind of gray bubble. You'll see here, there is a black symbol, and then inside the gray bubble, there is a number. These symbols indicate what color mana is required to cast this spell. How do you get that mana? Well, you would tap lands. What does tap mean? Darn it, it's getting complex already, isn't it? In each of your turns, you get to put 1 land from your hand onto the battlefield. That land will produce mana equal to, or in a color of its chosen affiliation. In this case, this is a basic land swamp. Remember what I said, the creature part being in the middle there. Basic land swamp means it only produces 1 black mana per turn. You will tap it to signify I have used this swamp. That means turning it sideways. Once you've used this swamp, it can no longer produce mana until the beginning of your next turn when you turn everything back, when you untap, they call it. So, if we wanted to cast our Reeve Soul, we would have to have at least 1 swamp, and then the other number next to it is at least 1 of something else. So Sanctuary Cat only costs just 1 Plains. The Reeve Soul costs 2 total, but you could have, let's say, paid with a swamp and paid with an island, or paid with a swamp and paid with a Plains, or whatever. The gray number can be any number or any color of mana, as long as you have paid at least 1 black mana. Okay? So, moving on, talking about our card types, yeah, these are lands, ladies and gentlemen. These are lands. You do not cast lands, you put lands into play. There is a very good reason for that. There, you know, there's rules for everything in Magic. Some people are scared by those rules, but those rules will set you free. There is always a correct answer. If you are sitting down across from a friend and you're playing a game and there's a dispute, this will happen regularly. Don't let it ruin a friendship, just have a great time. Rest assured, though, there is an answer to your problem. Sometimes that's just a quick Google search. Sometimes you've got to ask a more experienced player or something like that. But there is an answer. The rule set is very, very robust, and you can find your answer. So, lands, put into play 1 at a time, 1 per turn, on your turn only. So far, you have only been able to cast creatures and sorceries on your turn during your main phase. The next card type, called Instants, and you'll see again there, right between the picture and the text box down below, there is Instant. This card type can be cast on either your turn or your opponent's turn, only at a time when you have priority. Priority is different, don't worry about priority, but your turn or your opponent's turn. In this case, what does Ray of Revelation do? A single blue, 3 colorless, so 4 total mana. Draw 3 cards, then discard a card. Gives you more resources to work with. Maybe finds you more creatures or more, you know, instants and sorceries, things like that. Very powerful thing called card advantage. That will be gone over in a future video at a much more complex time. All right. So we have now seen creatures, sorceries, instants, lands. And this side of the lands, things get a little more complicated. If you're worried about building a deck as a brand new player and you're trying to do it all yourself, I would recommend kind of sticking to these first, because these are the easier ones to understand. So the next 2, I actually want to organize them like this, please forgive me, are very similar. Artifacts and enchantments. Both of those kind of change the rules of Magic a little bit. As if the rule system wasn't already robust, we're going to put cards in that change those rules. That's right, they do. The ones that are most frequently doing this sort of thing are enchantments. Just enchantment. In this case, you pay mana, and this item will come out onto the battlefield and just sit there. It doesn't do anything a lot of the time. Sometimes it does, but a lot of the time it doesn't. And it just sits there and modifies the rules of the game. Normally, the rules of the game is if I attack with a Sanctuary Cat, it's a 1/2. It will deal 1 damage and have 2 toughness. In this case, Ferocity of the Wild, and of course enchantments do lots and lots of different things. There's lots of really cool things to do with enchantments. Ferocity of the Wild, attacking non-human creatures you control get +1, +0, and have trample. So suddenly Sanctuary Cat goes from a 1/2 to a 2/2 trample. We'll go over trample in a future video. But notably, this changed the rules of the game. Sanctuary Cat, when sitting around, is just a 1/2. But when it's attacking, since it's a non-human, it gets 1/0. See, the rules of the game has been modified. Now, if I attack you with 4 creatures that are all non-humans, all of those get +1, +0. That's not normal. That isn't the way this normally works. But enchantments change that interaction. There are lots of really cool ways you can do this. But suffice to know, There are sometimes deviations from this. You'll have to read each card. Reading the cards is very important. You'll learn that more and more throughout your Magic going endeavors, believe me. However, there is a second type of enchantment. These are called auras. They still do a similar thing, right? They modify the rules of the game, but instead of modifying everything going on the board in the field of play, these will typically modify a single item, normally a creature. Enchantment aura, enchant creature. So yes, in this case, it will go on a creature, possibly Sanctuary Cat, right? Enchanted creature gets +3/+3 and attacks each turn if able. So our Sanctuary Cat here now, holy cow, it went from a very, very small creature as a 1/2 to a 4/5? Holy cow, ladies and gentlemen, this Sanctuary Cat is a real threat and will end the game relatively quickly, all on its own, when modified with this Impending Doom. The other text here on Impending Doom, when enchanted creature dies, Impending Doom deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. So suddenly there's a little bit of a downside here, isn't there? I say Impending Doom, and then my creature dies at some point from maybe an opponent's sorcery or instant. I'm going to take 3 damage. There's a little bit of risk here. The reward, though, the reward is very strong. By enchanting in Sanctuary Cat, maybe we can end the game very quickly. These are decisions you will make at both in the game and in your deck building decision. Okay, moving on. We have artifacts. Now, some artifacts, similar to Ferocity of the Wilds, will change the rules of the game. They play in that similar space. There are a number of examples of this. Forsaken Sanctuary could be one of them. There are others. But normally artifacts have activations. In this case, we can do any one of a number of different things. We can just let it sit there and not do anything at all. We can tap it, similar to lands, right? Once you've used it, now it's tapped and you can't use it again until it untaps, typically at the beginning of your turn. We can just tap it to scry one. Scry has meaning you look at a card, you can put it on top or on bottom. It's kind of nice, gives you a little advantage. Or, Mazemind Tome, you may pay 2 mana and tap it. Draw a card. Aha! Yes, more resources, more cards to work with, giving you a more advantage. And then this one also has text where it goes away after a certain amount of time, stuff like that. That's a card-specific thing. You can read Mazemind Tome later. It's a good card. Likely will go in a number of your decks. But there are other artifacts as well. There are equipment. So you can put them on a creature, and it's like your new Sanctuary Cat has a sword. Well, I don't know the mechanics of how that would work in real life, but darn it, in this game, our cute little kitten Sanctuary Cat can wield a sword if it has an equipment, or maybe get in a vehicle and drive it. Well, they are all there. And I can show you real quick. So a sword, bronze sword, or an equipment. In this case, Sanctuary Cat could drive a thundering chariot. These things will all be covered later, but suffice to say, there are a number of different artifacts, and most of them have activations that will go off. There's lots and lots of cards in the game. Okay, the last card type we're going to go over is typically the most complicated. If you don't understand, by all means, feel free to ask questions down below in the comments. But this is one of those ones where you'll probably have to see it in action before it makes much sense. Fear not, that video is also coming, but I will cover it because we're covering card types. And if you came here specifically to understand Plainswalkers and I tell you they exist and then don't cover them, I think that would be not a very good way of instructing you. In this case, Vivian, Monster's Advocate, costs green, and 3. So that's 5 total mana, 2 of it being required to be green, right? Remember, up in the top right. It is a legendary Plainswalker Vivian, very specifically her. Down You remember with our Sanctuary Cat, down in the bottom right-hand corner, there's Power and Toughness, a 1 and a 2. Power, Toughness, damage, resilience. You know, damage, how much damage can be taken before being destroyed. This is a little different. Vivien does not attack. Vivien has no power. Vivien doesn't have normal toughness either. Vivien, as a Planeswalker, has loyalty counters. When damage is dealt to Planeswalkers, loyalty counters are removed. They don't come back without some external factor interacting with them. In this case, Vivien puts her own counters on herself. She has a +1. So she would go from 3 loyalty, being able to absorb 3 damage before being destroyed. But she can +1 and give herself more loyalty. +1, create a 3/3 green beast with your choice of Vigilance, Reach, or Trample on it. And we'll go over those keywords in a future video as well. But suffice to say, her loyalty continues to go up. Well, why would you want that? Well, first of all, she can survive on the battlefield longer, continuing to accrue advantage turn after turn. You may activate Planeswalkers once per turn. She has another ability, -2. When you cast your next creature spell this turn, search your library for a creature card with lesser converted mana cost, put it onto the battlefield. So you would have to have a larger creature, let's say a 4 mana cost creature, and then you cast it, you can then search for anything less than 4. So you can search for a 3 mana cost creature, a 2 mana cost creature, or a 1 mana cost creature. Yes, if you really wanted your cute kitten Sanctuary Cat, when you cast 10/10 big old huge monstrous creature, you could go and find a Sanctuary Cat just this turn and one time if you -2'd Vivien, right? And then there, you know, depending on the Planeswalker, there are lots of different effects, all of them being interesting. Vivien, though, also has a passive. This doesn't need to be activated. Normally, Planeswalkers only do something when you plus them or minus them or 0 them sometimes and things like that, right? This particular Planeswalker has a passive on it. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. Gives you information. That's very nice. You may cast creature cards from the top of your library. What? Normally, you'd have to only be able to cast what's in your hand. Very, very powerful card. And again, a card that I would be remiss if I did not mention, because it's card type. Okay, in future videos, we're going to be talking about a number of different things. I'm going to show you examples of combat. I'm going to show you examples of how to actually mechanically cast cards, you know, tapping mana, casting spells, all that kind of thing. But then in future videos, we're going to be going over more intermediate concepts, such as actual basic deck building concepts, how many lands to have in your deck, the importance of card draw and the difference between card draw and card advantage. We're going to be discussing life and graveyards as a resource, all kinds of things in the intermediates. But then there's also going to be more advanced concepts later on down the road, such as card evaluation and having a strong mental game, what it means to have priority or not, the stack, all kinds of things. These things are all way in the future. So keep tuning in on Tuesdays, and I'm going to be putting up new videos intended to be instructional for your edification. That said, I do have personal things going on as well. I have a Twitch channel. I stream Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That's 5 days a week at 6 p.m. Central. I'd love to see you folks there. I'm always looking for new friends. I've had a lot of really positive experiences on the platform, and I've made a lot of new friends, but I always like to add to them. Come on out and see us. More importantly, please, if you know a newer player, recommend the series. I'm not trying to do this out of selfish gain so much as I'm really trying to make Magic more accessible. I love Magic the Gathering. I have been playing for a very long time. I've taught my own children how to play. I've taught my wife how to play. I've taught a number of friends. I've even taught friends' children to play the game because I love sharing this game with other people. I understand it's very complex. There's a lot going on, and it can be very difficult to learn. So I'm trying my best to make instructional videos that can help all of these people learn to play the game that I love and am passionate about. So please share it with them. That would make a big difference. And if let's say they're stubborn, heavens knows I have a little dose of that myself. Maybe you could pass on some of this information. I know that maybe not everybody will even like my personality or that sort of thing. Maybe my videos won't be as useful to them personally. But if you can get something out of it and pass along this knowledge and help grow our game, I'd really appreciate it. That said, I will catch you next time.